Hello, this is episode 182, and this is just a forewarning that today's guest talks about trauma, specifically about child abuse, sexual abuse, and please be aware and forewarned. And if this is something that might be upsetting, please take precaution. And with that, on with the interview. Welcome to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. This is Charlie, and today we have a guest. His name is Greg. How are you doing, Greg?
Doing good, Charlie. Glad to be here.
Thank you for agreeing to appear on the podcast. Towards the end, we're going to get into the formation of a more formal Kratom's Anonymous organization online and with a national presence and with meetings every day. But first, we're going to talk a little bit more about your background and then your Kratom quitting story. And then we'll get into that, which I think is a great resource and one of the reasons we're having you on. First off, if I ran into you on an elevator and we have 20 floors to go, tell me about Greg.
If we were on an elevator, the reality is I'd be looking at my feet, but that's not the correct way to answer that question. My name is Greg. I'm 51 and a half years old. I would do this many, but that would take too long. I recently retired. I was 30 years as a corporate middle management lackey for many IT firms. I got a little tired of that. And one day I just said, I'm done with this and I'm going to go ahead and retire and try to do something more meaningful with my life.
All right. And if I understand right, before Kratom was in your life, you had 18 and a half or so years off of drugs and alcohol. What did your recovery look like during those multiple decades?
Yeah, the recovery part wasn't difficult. It was getting recovered that was a challenge. I had a very difficult childhood. My father was a Vietnam veteran, did one tour in Nam. He was a very violent man. My mother was the queen of all alcoholics. If alcoholism was an Olympic event, she would be the Greg the Gainus of drinking. So my childhood was filled with violence. My first memory of my father was him choking me out. And they got divorced when I was 8. And then I just had a lot of problems. My mother would get very drunk. She'd come into my bedroom at night, mistake me for her husband. And that happened often. She was a very sick woman and she caused a lot of emotional distress. For the first 15 years of my life, it was fear. There was nothing but fear and panic and chaos. She was actually convinced at one point that they were demons in the house, and she'd run around with a crucifix and holy water, fighting off invisible enemies, to the point where Ed and Lorraine Warren actually came to our house and did an exorcism. I was 9, so I passed on that, took a nap instead. But it was long story short, it was filled with sexual and physical and mental abuse. And that is the root cause of a lot of my issues. So when it came time for me to get sober for the first try, I was around 29. I'd been with my wife at the time since I was 16. I had significant arrested development from the abuse, and I started drinking at 15. So I was a 29-year-old, 15-year-old. I did not know how to adapt or communicate with people. The world was all about me, and everyone in the world was just a tool to get what I wanted. And I don't know how. I have no idea how she stayed with me for as long as she did. I was never physically abusive. I was never even verbally abusive. But the mind games and the manipulation that I played on her, especially, and everyone in my life at that time, was sick, is absolutely sick. And I was just trying to fill something. I didn't know how to be satisfied in my own skin. If I had things, I would feel better. But when I got those things, I just wanted more things. Or if I could control this person, or this person would give me this, say this, or do that. Just always trying to orchestrate everything around me. And the alcohol was the only relief for that. I started off addicted to alcohol. Kratom's coming, but it was alcohol at first. That's the only time I was a normal functioning human being. I wasn't, but I felt like I was. We're 9 years married. My wife's going to leave me. She's done with it. And I just had a very simple solution. I'll stop drinking and things will be better. I will be a better man. All I'm going to do is stop drinking. I went to AA. I didn't do the steps. I see it in KA. The aversion to the steps is there's an ick factor to them. I'll be the first to admit it. And I had that ick about the steps. So I just went to AA meetings. I do have a rather strong willpower. And I was able to go a year without drinking, no steps. I just went to the AA meetings to brag about my day count. Made me feel important, made me feel good. There were people there I could manipulate and control. It was awesome. It's a good time. But then after a year of being sober, and I'm thinking, hey, everything's great. I'm sober. My wife must be fine now. But I actually became worse. I was worse sober than I was drunk. Because at least when I was drunk, I was jovial and relaxed. So I was sober, but I was still a miserable, wretched bastard. And my wife left. Came home one day after a year of being sober. She left. I still didn't start drinking. I went another year and then something happened. I won't get into it, but I heard something that she had done through a friend. And that's when I started drinking after 2 years. And I got into a pretty serious car wreck drunk. And at that point, I was done. It was an emotionally devastating bit of news. It literally killed a part of me and it metaphorically killed a part of me. So I drank. Within 3 hours of drinking, I had wrecked my car. I drove it through a brick wall, got arrested, kept drinking. 363 days later, got a second DUI, was facing 6 months in county jail, lawyered up big time, beat that. And that was my rock bottom. Two back-to-back DUIs in 1 year is not good.
Yeah.
So that's when I took the steps seriously. That's when I never left the rooms, but that's when I went there and sought out a sponsor. I was so difficult. My first sponsor relapsed. Might have been my fault. Might not have been. I don't know. But my second sponsor was a salty old lady. She was 50. I was 30. I was old back then. And she was able to call me on my bullshit. When I was doing the whatabouts and the 12-step lawyerism, she looked me dead in the eye and said, that's why no one likes you. And that stung because I thought I was a well-liked and popular dude. And that's when the steps became serious. That's when I worked the steps. That's how I found 18 and a half years of sobriety and a lovely, boring life after that with very little desire to use.
So during those 20 years of boredom, and it sounds like alcohol was your primary problem. What were some of the highlights of recovery and the benefits of working the steps?
It was great because I'm not self-deprecating. I was an asshole. I was not the kind of person you wanted to hang out with. I hung out with nothing but other addicts. And if you're both addicts, if you want to drink, I want to drink. We're friends. I learned to be a human being. I learned to relate to people. I learned to listen. I learned empathy. A lot of that arrested development that I was suffering from, I started to mature and I just became a normie. I had some unique hobbies, did photography. I was a ghost hunter for a while. I had an internet radio station. I was just working my job, living a decent, normal, and quite boring, happy life. And it was good.
All right. And then my understanding, maybe about a year ago, you first came across of Kratom.
That's correct. I,
Go ahead, tell us about that.
yeah, so I'm not making any excuses. 18 and a half years, I wasn't paying attention to the drugs. I didn't know what the young people were doing. They're doing the kratom, they're doing the bath salts. I wasn't paying attention. And I went to a tobacco store, not a head shop, that I always go to buy my loose leaf tobacco. And there was a little end cap with 7-OH there. And the guy who I know very well said, yeah, do you want to try this? It's kind of like coffee. And I'm like, I like coffee. So I took the free sample. This was right after I retired. It was like 3 days into my retirement. And there was some stuff going on with my current wife and boredom and other things that I'm going to leave out because I don't want to bring her story into it. But I wasn't in the best headspace. But I also didn't know that I was basically taking heroin out of the tobacco store. So I went home and I took it. And as soon as I did, I knew exactly what it was. I had some experience with opioids before I got clean before. I knew what it was, but I didn't care. I was like, you know what? I'm retired. Yeah, I'm gonna run with this. I'm gonna see where this takes me. And I did. And it took me down. It was good at first. It kept me busy watching the birds on my back porch all day. The birds were much more entertaining on 7-OH. As we all know, the 7-OH, the tolerance goes up quick and you need more. And it becomes a very underperforming drug in a very short time.
So, did you ever end up taking any of the lower dose types of kratom, or was it 7-OH the whole time?
Right to the 7-OH, I didn't even know there was a such thing as powder or extracts. I just knew those little tablets.
Yeah, yeah. So, a free sample, go to a tobacco shop, the people there, and whammo. How did things escalate? How much were you spending a day? How many milligrams were you taking?
It wasn't, oh man, I should admit to this. We're friends here, right, Charlie? We're
Yeah.
friends. Okay, it's a safe zone. I have another business and I had a tax thing. So I literally formed a company where I could buy the 7-OH wholesale. And that's what I was doing. I had a business that I never sold any to anyone. It's just buying it for myself. But the markup on that stuff is about 75%. I never really got to above 250 milligrams. The beauty is when I started, 30 was the most that was in the store. And so in my mind, 30 was the high end recommended dose. So I started off at 15 and 30 was always the mental barrier for me. And I knew I was playing with fire. I didn't do any research as to what it was, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to know because that might make me want to quit. So I just lived in the dark and said, yeah, just keep it to around 30. Don't take more than 30. But at a certain point, I was taking 30 so many times, it was adding up well into the 200s as the 250 range. I would estimate towards the end, I was probably doing somewhere between 200 and 250 milligrams a day.
Yeah, and the reason it was affordable was because you created a company, bought the stuff wholesale, and wow, 75% markup. I always suspected that, and I knew that you can get a kilo of powder really cheap. Were you going to meetings during this period, this time? Were you actively working the steps or anything?
I was always a very strong advocate of the steps, and I was still going to meetings. I was no longer taking sponsorees, but I was going to the rooms. I wasn't sharing as much. I was distancing a little bit. My moral inventory and my step 12 work were definitely at a low point. And then of course when the 7-OH came in, I didn't want to go anywhere. I just stayed at home for 10 months.
So, how did things start to get bad that and made you say maybe I should get off of this stuff?
Honestly, it just got to the point where I wasn't getting the desired effect anymore. And I retired. I had plans. There was things I was going to do and they weren't getting done. I had grandiose ideas. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. I'm going to do all these things, but nothing was happening. I was quite literally every morning going out my back porch and watching the birds and chain smoking cigarettes and watch a movie. Grand ideas, no action. And it finally just got to a point where it's like, I just started, what am I on? What have I done? And you pull the blinders off. And of course, everyone else goes, you go on Reddit and you realize that you're on here. And that's when, holy shit, like this isn't going to work out. You spent 30 years working your ass off. You saved all your money. You're finally in your golden years and you're addicted to what is essentially heroin. And this could pose some long-term retirement problems. And that's when I decided it needed to stop.
Were you able to quit the very first time you tried, or did you have to have multiple attempts?
I quit the first time. I decided to taper off it. I did at this point, I had done my research. I knew what I was taking, learned about Suboxone and other methods, but I just figured, let's go with the devil and let's taper off it. And it was a 72-day taper. I started at 135 milligrams a day, 22.5 every 4 hours. And I stuck to that schedule. And then I eventually went to every 6 hours, every 8 hours. And 72 days later, I was down to 6 milligrams every 8 hours, 18 milligrams total. And then that's when I stepped off. At no point during those 72 days was there a cheat. It was meticulous. It was detailed. I even I would crush the powder up. You'd take a capsule, it weighed a certain amount of grams. If it's 50 milligram capsule, you divide it by 50, and that's the weight of 1 milligram. And I'd put it in a capsule, so I didn't want to taste it. And I just listened to the clock. The clock became my higher power. And I slowly but surely was able to wean down. And I got off it. And I think the step work, like I really do think the foundation and the steps, because I never walked away from the steps completely. And it was that foundation, especially of the moral inventory, to know what's going to work for me. I know my own bullshit. And I was able to capture it and not listen to it and listen to the right voices underneath my hat or in my head. And I was able to do it.
What kind of withdrawals or any side effects did you have during that taper?
During the taper, when I first tapered, I dropped my original dose by about 35%, which in retrospect was too much. I wish I had actually tapered slower. So there was mild to moderate withdrawal, restless legs, the yawning, the sneezing, the chills, but they were manageable. At all times, they were manageable. And after, it would take about 7 days to adjust to that dose before I would then lower more to stabilize. And once I took that initial 35% hit, I started to reduce much slower. And I was able to mitigate the majority of the physical withdrawal. It was the mental part that was sheer unadulterated hell. The anxiety, the irritability. I swear to God, I was seeing shadow men at one point at night. Like, I think there was times when there was just a full emotional psychotic breakdown. I don't know what it does to you, but it gets in your head. And I did it alone. I did not have any help. Did it myself in my bedroom. I did a lot of step work. I would actually, you're on it, right? You're tapering off it. You're taking it when the clock says to take it. So when you had that hour or so of like numb feeling and happy, I revisited step 4 and I looked at it in a different perspective this time. It wasn't about character defects. It was about shame, because I never addressed shame when I did the steps the first time. And it got me sober for 18 and a half months. So horseshoes and hand grenades, close enough. But it was the shame that, that led to some degree to why I stayed on the 7-OH for as long as I did. And I had to address the shame, and I had to address the molestation, and I had to address some other sillier things. So during that time, I sponsored myself in some weird kratom frenzy. Don't recommend it,
Yeah.
but you got to do what you got to do. And I was able to, while anesthetized with the kratom, relive the traumas. I would go back, I'd revisit them. And then when the anxiety came and the anger, I stepped away from that and I'd go revisit it. And we played this game in 4-hour cycles and 6-hour cycles and 8-hour cycles for 72 straight days.
And after that taper, have you been able to stay off the 7-OH?
Yes. So when it was day 1 and I had redone step 4, I had to then admit not my character defects, but my shame to my higher power, to myself, and at least one other person. I didn't have anybody around. So I went on to a recovery meeting and there was about 50 people on there. And on day one off the taper, I told everyone that my mother raped me, and she raped me often. The poor host. Oh my God, the poor host. I don't even know what to say, but I shared it and I said to the group, and I shared some other things too. I played with dolls and other silly things. I'm not the most masculine fellow in the world, but I shared all these things that I was legitimately ashamed of. And of course, the mom thing was the biggest. And I gave it to the group. I said, it's yours now. I don't want it. I give it to you. It's your weight to carry. I've never told anyone this, not my first wife, not my second wife, nobody. And I just told a room of 50 strangers. And I said, it's yours now, no takebacks. Since then, it has become easy to talk about. I can almost joke about it now. It's almost comical that I thought this was some deep, dark, horrible secret that people are going to hate me if I share it. But letting it go, as well as the other character defects and all the other things that you really do just have to let go, was incredibly liberating. I think I've been about 50 days off it now. I'm not a fan of day counts. I've met people who are 25 days sober, who are more healthy and more in tune with other people and their recovery than people with 2 years. But November 21 was my day one. So I think it's been about 50 days. But
Okay,
I haven't looked back and I don't have any desire to use it.
that's great. Yeah. You have to be a little bit careful of doing trauma dumping. I think that's what the kids call it these days, in a room of people that might also have a bunch of trauma. Have you ever talked to a professional about this experience that you had? And I'm sorry that it sounds like it was a horrible thing with your mother, but have you ever had a professional assistance?
No, sir, I have not. And I did warn the group. You say trigger warning, but yeah, I did
Yeah.
that.
I think trauma is a root cause to a lot of addiction. And when you think about the trauma that a lot of us have experienced in our childhood, using drugs, using alcohol, using kratom makes sense. It's a way to soothe ourselves, and then it works until it doesn't. And then we have to find new coping mechanisms. What was the inspiration to start up KA? For the longest time, I knew there was a meeting on Saturdays. I think it was at 5 o'clock Eastern. That's been going on for a couple of years. But what was the inspiration about starting up KA?
As I was going through it, it dawned on me, like, again, I'm not a victim in any shape or form in my life. I'm not a victim. And I wasn't, yeah, I took one kratom and I was tricked, but I took the second and the third and the 470th. But it just, I don't know, for me, I, it was just like, this is pretty bizarre that you can just go to a gas station or go to a head shop or go to that and you can just pick up morphine. You can just pick up heroin to go and no one's IDing for it. And then I started to learn that some states have it in vending machines. One of the grandiose ideas I had while in a kratom haze was I want to start a peer support group. I want to form something similar to AA and I want to help people. I want to get back. And I told myself, if you can get off this through whatever higher power, through whatever miracle, if you can get through this, you have to help other people. You have to. You used to help people get off alcohol. And I don't have as, I don't like alcohol, but I hate kratom. And we're going to help people. That's what you're going to do with your retirement. You retired, you had no idea what you're going to do. So you just sat out on your back porch all day. You're going to have a mission and you're going to spend however many days I have left on this earth. I want to help people who are addicted to kratom. And maybe what we offer at KA isn't the right thing. 12 steps aren't for everyone, but I want to offer a path. And if people want to walk that path, then they are more than welcome to do. We're here and we want to help.
Yeah, I can relate to the idea for this podcast was similar. I was detoxing off of kratom extracts and I was having really bad withdrawals. And the idea of the podcast came up. I was listening to some alcohol sobriety kind of podcast, and I was binging them, and I thought that'd be great if we had the same thing for Kratom. And I was really blown away too. I didn't have anything of the online education about Kratom. I just walked into a vape shop and saw it on a shelf. So I didn't know that there was a big debate and this big history about it and mixed messages. Because if you go to one corner of their internet, it's safe and non-addictive and like coffee. And then on the other side of the internet, there's a lot of red flags and warnings. One thing I've struggled with in the podcast and just giving people advice is how much should we have a Kratom separated space and how much should we just send people to Narcotics Anonymous or even AA? Have you put any thought into that? What role like a Kratom specific 12-step fellowship can offer that the other fellowships might not be able to do?
First and foremost, and I don't want to, I can't stress enough that a 12-step program is not the only way to get recovery. But if we're talking about 12-step programs, I would theorize that as a Kratom addict, you could go into an AA room or you can go into an NA room. You could probably even go to a Gambling Anonymous room. The core principle of the 12 steps holds true, and every group modifies it a little bit, but the core principles are there. What I think makes Kratom Anonymous different is Kratom addicts they're not understood. There's so much controversy around whether it's good or bad. No one can relate. If you go into an NA room and you say you're on Kratom, the guy sitting next to you might be using it to get off of fentanyl. So now he's not going to be too happy. I've been to enough AA rooms where, outside issue. So why not come to a group where everyone is on Kratom and we've all been there, and the experience on powder extracts and 7-OH might be a little bit different, but there's common ground. It's easier to find fellowship, which is you and I both know that in a 12-step program, or I would say in any recovery program, you need fellowship, you need service, and you need a method for recovery. And I would just on a side note, if you are looking to find a recovery group, you want to look into that recovery group the same way you'd go to a doctor. If a doctor's going to do a procedure on you, the doctor's going to tell you what he's going to do. So ask your recovery group, what is your methodology for recovery? Yeah, you'll find fellowship and you can always do service. There's always something you can do and you're always going to make friends. But what is the methodology of recovery? And it doesn't have to be the 12 steps. Just make sure there is one.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the 12 steps are not for everybody, and there's multiple pathways to recovery. I'm grateful that a stronger KA movement is emerging. Some of the things, especially at AA meetings, a lot of times if you bring up another substance, it can be really frowned upon. And it depends on the geography and the spirit of the group and stuff. That's the fellowship that I come out of. And I've just thought in my head internally that it's just green booze and everything else is the same. But in NA, it's even more complicated because some people might be there harm reducing with Kratom. Your sponsor, you might get a sponsor and he does Kratom daily. And that's one of the challenges. The only advice I've said, like, if you're in an NA meeting, maybe just say you're on a over the counter opioid. Though then you're worried like somebody after the meeting will ask, what were you doing? And you don't even want to tell them that it was Kratom because you don't want to give somebody a bad idea at a sobriety space, like something. But what are you using for your literature right now?
We've adapted a lot of what A and NA does. A lot of the AA material is copywritten. So we certainly don't want to use anything that's copywritten. But we've taken the same core values of what you would see in AA or NA, and we've put a very small twist to Kratom. I know, like, for example, with our version of the 12 steps, we focus on a higher power, not a God, that really, and I'm not a religious man. My higher power when I was tapering, and this sounds flippant, but it's not. It's my higher power was the clock on my microwave. When the clock said it was time to take a dose, that was the time. That's what I surrendered my will to. And that's really all a higher power is. It can be more. It can even be less. We try not to emphasize religion. And I'm like in step 4, I put a quick blurb about shame for reasons that you can probably understand. Because when I was working step 4, I didn't character defects. What happened to me wasn't a character defect. I didn't want to bring it up anyways. And I'm looking for any excuse. It's 12-step lawyerism. So I didn't bring it up. And I wonder if I did that 19 so years ago, if I just said what I said a couple months ago, maybe I didn't fully work the steps as a result. We've made some minor adjustments to the literature. It's on very pretty letterhead too. I'll have to show you the letterhead. It's very
All
nice.
right.
As a header and a footer, it's really nice.
How do your meetings look like right now? How many times a day and how many days a week are and we'll put a link in the show notes to the meeting schedule so you don't have to get it exactly.
Monday through Friday, we have meetings at 10 Eastern time, 10 a.m. Eastern time, and 9 p.m. Eastern time. On Thursdays, we also throw one in at 6:45 p.m. Eastern time for good measure. So it's 10, 6:45, and 9. On Saturdays and Sundays, it is 1 p.m. Eastern time and 5 p.m. Eastern time.
All right. And are you starting to get a critical mass? Do you have some people that can be sponsors?
We do have people who have been through the 12 steps. We do have sponsors. Attendance is growing. Our morning meetings tend to have a pretty good turnout. Evenings are still struggling to find a foothold, but we're only 3 weeks old.
All right. Just switching gear. And as we start to head to maybe wrapping this up, we do like to have, we're not a glum lot to reference some of the literature. So just a couple personal questions. What do you do for fun?
That is the hardest question you've asked me.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, man, I'm doing a lot with the KA thing, which is fun, but I don't think that's what you're asking me.
No, no. Tell me a little bit about photography.
I did that for a while. I enjoyed it, but I just found that it's something I was never going to get that good at. I picked up a couple of accounts, would never do weddings. They would scare the hell out of me. I was a ghost hunter for a while. I guess that's fun.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a quick ghost story?
I've seen things that I can't explain, but I don't try to explain them. But it was an interesting 4 or 5 years where I would just run around with audio visual equipment trying to capture a ghost on camera. I did a lot of weird things while sober because I think addicts have extreme personalities. So I had a lot of unusual hobbies throughout the years, none of which really had any social causes or anything really worth talking about. I don't want to have fun anymore. I just want to help addicts.
What kind of music do you listen to?
Huge Barry Manilow fan. Love Barry Manilow. I would like to take a moment. Maybe he's listening. Maybe could happen. But he has the lung cancer. That
That said,
breaks my heart.
my mother's a big Barry fan. I grew up with his music, and 15 years ago, I took her to a Barry Manilow concert, and it actually wasn't that bad.
I've been to I've been to like 18 of them. I've met him in person a couple of times.
Wow.
Did I mention I'm not the most masculine fellow in the world? Yeah, I met him. It was me and about 10 other ladies. And yeah, I
Yeah.
got to meet Barry Manilow.
All right. So just getting back to the purpose of our podcast, anything tips that you have for somebody that's trying to quit kratom? Any advice?
You've you There are resources out there. Some are going to help you in the short term. Some are going to help you in the long term. It depends on the level of addiction. Some people are going to pick up feel freeze. They may not have the addict personality, and they might just need a little bit of help, a little bit of education, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of support to come off it. If you have an addictive personality, you need to get into a recovery. You need to get into some kind of recovery group where you're going to get the fellowship and the service and a methodology for recovery, and find a methodology that works with you. Try to be honest with yourself. The first thing you have to do, and I'm talking to the addicts out there, the first thing you have to do, and I know this is step one, but step one is rudimentary. You are powerless over the substance. You can accept that powerlessness. And you can truly understand that I am powerless. And if I take it, no matter how bad it is, no matter how bad it is right now, if you take it, it's going to get worse. And at some point, I pray that that will click in the mind of every addict and they will truly realize that. Because once you do, taking it doesn't make sense anymore. It's just going to make it worse.
And being a newbie to Kratom, not a veteran, what was the most surprising thing that you just looking back at the last year?
It's how it just took everything. It just took everything away from me. It took away my spirituality. It took away my compassion. It took away my empathy. It almost turned me back into, and I cannot stress enough what a selfish, manipulative prick I was before I got sober from alcohol. And I just didn't care about anything. And I was just gonna rot away. And sooner or later, I don't have a job to lose. I'm not in any financial distress. So there wasn't really a rock bottom I could hit. I wasn't going to stick around and find out what it was going to do.
Yeah.
It was bad, and it had to be rooted up and eradicated.
Yeah, it's pretty serious if you buy the stuff wholesale because a lot of times with the Kratom addictions, it's the money that's the first thing that destroys you before your health. But you were able to avoid that through the wholesale purchase and maybe having a little bit more money than the average person because of your retirement assets. Did you close down your wholesale operation?
Yes, I did. Among other small businesses that I was actually running. My plan actually is to move out of the country.
Okay.
I'm going to retire and head out of the country. I'm happy to announce that KA is only days away from being recognized as a nonprofit out of Delaware. I chose Delaware because it's the only state in the union where you don't have to be in the US to run it. Because my plan is sometime in the May timeframe to sell this house, and I'm probably going to go to Sicily and start a new life. And the only thing that I'm going to take from here to there is KA.
Yeah, with technology these days, you can be a digital nomad and that can be international. And I wish you the best in your travels. And any parting words you'd like to give to the audience?
If you're still listening, thanks, man. I hope this was at least entertaining, but hopefully informative. But yeah, I'm glad you're still listening.
Thanks a lot for being on the show today. We appreciate it. And we'll get the word out there about these meetings. I'm thrilled that there's an extra resource out there. And I wish KA the best success.
Thank you.